Hi everyone, today I'm going to be making some bouquets for Mother's Day and I will be showing you the whole process. So first of all, we're going to start by picking our flowers. The main focal flower for these bouquets are going to be these irises because they're just like the flashiest, most colorful thing that I have growing in my yard right now. So I'm going to be picking a bunch of these, and these are really easy to pick because they just have long, straight, and sturdy stems with not a lot of leaves in the way. You basically just have to cut right down to the ground as far as you can go. And I'm really aiming to pick the ones that haven't fully opened yet. So the ones that are just starting to show their petals coming out of that case is what I'm going for, but I also picked a few that look like they have been freshly opened as well. I don't want any that have been fully opened already out in the yard because that means that they're going to have a shorter vase life. A lot of flowers, if they've already bloomed outside, the color will also fade faster because they've been in the sun. I love how bold and bright the purple of these irises are, and they're going to make a really good focal flower for these bouquets. The next flower I'm picking is going to be these dianthus. This is another really colorful one. You can see they are a hot pink color. Not all of them are open, unfortunately, right now. Some of them are kind of still have these like fluffy heads, but I'm actually still going to pick those just because I think the structure and texture of them still looks really nice in a bouquet. And since I want to have these in time for Mother's Day, I kind of just have to make do with what's blooming right now. And it's still pretty early in the spring, so there's not too much, and I want to fill these bouquets with as many different things as I can. Dianthus has a really good vase life, and I find that it holds really well whether it's fully bloomed or still green. And these are another flower that have a really nice strong stem that's easy to pick. There aren't a lot of branches coming off of these, so you can basically just go to the base of each branch. You will have to pick off some of those lower leaves, but it's very easy to do. Next we have this glorious Nepeta plant. This is a member of the catnip family. It has these long stems of beautiful little purple flowers. This is often used as a landscaping plant, but I think that the stems are really beautiful in bouquets and they hold up really well. I haven't found that there's any specific time to pick these. They seem to do pretty well in the vase whether or not the flowers are fully open or just opening. So I'm just going after the longest stems that I can. I picked them all at once and then I brought them to my table to strip the lower third of the leaves and petals off, and I just find it faster to pick everything and then strip the leaves later. I really love this plant not only because it makes a great cut flower, but it's a really carefree plant and it's drought tolerant. The bees also really love them, and I love how these stems kind of actually look like stems of lavender because of that light purple color and the structure of them, but it's much easier to grow than actual lavender. Next, for more of a foliage filler, we're going to be attacking this massive bed of mint that's behind our shed. As you all probably know, mint spreads like crazy and grows like crazy, and in the spring it is just starting to explode. But this is perfect because mint makes a really good filler for bouquets, so I can take as much as I want from this mint patch and there will probably still be more than we can ever use. So I'm just gonna go after it and pick some stems, and then I'll strip the lower third of the leaves later on, like I'm doing with all the rest of these flowers. And the other main foliage plant that I'll be using is Solomon seal. This is another landscape plant that just holds up really well in the vase, and it's just a really beautiful variegated foliage that makes this bouquet seem a lot more luxurious. It just reminds me of something that you would get at a fancy floral shop, and these stems are super long and sturdy, which is awesome. I have a few other flowers that I really only have a few of, but I'm going to be picking them anyway, since my bouquets are going to be sort of random assortments anyway. This first one is Bachelor's Button, also known as cornflower, and it is quickly becoming one of my favorite flowers. Even though it's very humble and easy to grow, it's just this beautiful blue color. They do have really long stems, although they are a little bit more tedious to pick as well because there are so many branches of them and they tend to flop over. But if you have the patience, I think it makes a really good filler. especially because all of my other flowers are also in this blue purple color scheme. These will go along perfectly with it. So the first few flowers I picked were a little past their prime because they were fully open, but these ones that I'm showing you here that have just started to crack out are really the optimum stage that you should be picking these for the longest vase life. If you do have flowers that are fully open and don't want to give them away or sell them, you can always just pick off the petals and dry them. That's what I've been doing because they keep their color really well, and I'm going to be using those to top some of our handmade soaps. So that's another reason why I'm starting to really love this flower. A couple of other little random flowers I have in this assortment. This first one here is called Bee's Friend, which I only have one stem of, unfortunately, but I thought it was too good to waste. It has these really neat shaped flowers that unfurl kind of like a fern. This one is called Sweet Annie, and I love how it looks like little pom-poms. It is so cute, and the yellow color perfectly complements all of the blues and purples that we have in these bouquets. I do wish we had some more yellow flowers in bloom, but we'll make do with what we have. Then we have yarrow, which is not in bloom right now. You can actually see there are some of those buds here that haven't opened yet, but I'm just using this as a foliage because I think that the texture is really neat and I have a lot of it, so I thought this would be good just to add into a few bouquets. I also have these globe allium flowers, which I really love. I just think they're kind of different from something you would get in a store, so I wanted to include those. So all together here, all my flowers, I put everything into buckets of fresh water and I let them all sit either for a few hours or overnight. And this process is really important because you want those flowers to rehydrate before you handle them so that they don't wilt and they're nice and sturdy. You also want to make sure that your buckets or whatever you're putting your flowers in are very clean, because if there's any dirt, that can clog up the stem and prevent it from hydrating and soaking up any water. After everything sat overnight, I made a couple of sample bouquets just to see how I liked everything and to see what kind of number of stems I wanted to put of each flower. And then I laid out all of my different flowers in their respective categories onto this work surface. It helps to have everything categorized and laid out so that when you're going to make your bouquets, you can just pick a few from each category and make it really quickly without having to fumble with them in the buckets. You don't have to worry about them wilting. Since they've had a few hours or even overnight to rehydrate, they are very well hydrated by now and they'll be just fine for the few minutes that it will take you to assemble everything. So to start off each of these bouquets, I just take a couple of stems to start off with. I'm not too particular about the order, especially in the beginning, it doesn't really matter, but once you start adding more stems, what I like to do is go through each category for the flowers that I'm going to be including multiples of. I like to add one stem, turn the bouquet a little bit in my hands, add another stem of the same element, turn it in my hands again, and then add a third one. I do usually try to add things in 2s or 3s, unless it's like a special flower like the alliums, in which I'll only add one. But for these specific bouquets that I'm making, my formula is basically 3 irises, 3 dianthus, 1 globe allium, 3 or 4 stems of nepeta, about 4 stems of mint, and then for those random flowers that I have, I'll just add a couple of one variety, so each bouquet will have one element that's a little bit different for each of them, which I think is really fun. And then I'll finish off with 2 or 3 stems of the Solomon seal. These are perfect for the edge of the bouquets because they're really large, so they kind of like envelop all of the smaller stems inside. So in total, it's about 15 to 20 stems per bouquet. Once I've gathered all the flowers in my hands, I'm going to bring it over to these craft papers that I've already prepped and folded. I showed how I made these little paper cones in my tulip bouquet making video, so I'll link that down below if you want to see how I did that. I just placed the bouquet down, making sure that the tops of the flowers are sticking up out of the cone so that the customer can see it. And then I'll staple it together, and since it's Mother's Day, we printed out these stickers that just say Happy Mother's Day, and then we're going to put it over the staple just to make it look a little bit nicer and more professional. So that's what it looks like all wrapped up in the cone. And of course, don't forget to trim off the stems at the bottom so that everything is even. I just tried to go along with whatever the shortest stem is and trim the rest of them to that length. Then once that's done, you just place it into a bucket of water and you continue on with the rest of your flowers. So I'll show you the process here again. I'm starting off with some of the more focal flowers, and since I have some flowers that are more open than others, what I'll usually do is I'll try to include one flower that's more open and then two that are more closed up. That way each person can enjoy the different stages of each flower. So for example, I have an iris that's completely opened, but then the other two that I include are just going to be iris buds. And then for the dianthus, I'll have one that's the bright hot pink, and then I'll have two that are more of like that green fluffy top. And that way I can make sure that I don't end up with one bouquet at the end that has no color as well. Once you kind of have like a formula for how to make your bouquets depending on the flowers that you have, it goes pretty quickly, and really you don't have to be too particular about the positioning of each flower in the bouquet because things are going to move around just a little bit, and in all likelihood someone's going to take this home and rearrange it in their own vase anyway. So I think that just having lots of different textures and colors just to make it look really interesting is the best thing you can do for this kind of bouquet. It would also be really fun to play with different color schemes. Like I mentioned, a lot of the flowers that I have at this time just happen to be all in this like blue purple color scheme, and I have little hits of yellow which is really complementary to purple. So at the end, all of these bouquets somehow seemed really coordinated even though it was all by chance, but I'm really happy with how they came out either way. So here are my completed buckets of bouquets. I ended up with 10 in total. And as much as I love each bouquet on its own, they look even better in this massive grouping. I love all of the different little flowers that peek out over the tops of the bouquets, and how each bouquet is just a little bit different with those random little flowers that I added in. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful. Happy Mother's Day to all of those mothers out there, and I will see you again in the next video.